A good litmus test for the right is the degree to which you respect the ruralite. The countryside has always served to preserve the folkways and ancestral customs of a people. The city is where those customs go to die under the crushing burdens of efficiency, globalization, and profitability. It's for this reason that Coudenhove-Kalergi hated the ruralite and lionized the urbanite. The city is the hub of progress, social, technological, economic, and otherwise. It is the place of the factory, of the corporation, of the political centers of power. It is a mixing bowl for people and ideas, all living in close proximity, that proximity being the very cause of the dissolution of boundaries. As a symbol, the city is a monolith of modernizing trends, the same ones that have led to the corruption of social order and the race. Those who value money over traditional ideals naturally love the city. It is the hotbed of wealth, banking, credit, and finance. All the people that we hate, Stalin, Soros, Bill Gates, etc., have made it their mission to sacrifice people to this concrete idol in the name of industrial progress. When Stalin said he needed grain, it was grain for Moscow, not for the Russian people. Bill Gates is buying up farms, attempting to sublimate the agrarian lifestyle to that of the smart city, leaving only the dregs of humanity in the neo-serfdom that he and the NWO are envisioning. Indeed, the countryside is a wasteland to these people. They see no value in it other than as a breadbasket. The spirit of Stalin and the Red Terror looms over us in a new form. To the elites, the people who inhabit the countryside are only kindling for the urban industrial machine. They see empty land, not privately owned farmlands passed from generation to generation. It's a complete waste of space to them. They see land on which refugees could be housed in Soviet-style apartment blocks. This tweet by Tom Harwood is emblematic of their view. Farms are too inefficient, they are not automated nor industrialized enough. There is still a quiet spark of the easygoing, slow, and family-centric lifestyle that must be snuffed out to make way for the speed of machinery and the din of self-displaced migrants, who are the pointless product of the destruction of Malthusian limits. The internationalists have always coveted this land. Stalin wanted to transform the lands of smallholding Ukrainian peasants into collective farms, which he believed would be more efficient at feeding the urban centers. Today, they want to turn pastures into breeding dens for insectoidal food because it will help them beat the food limits on population and to usher in an era of the fecund, landless masses. Nothing has changed. They see that land ownership grants people some autonomy. It is a bulwark against the total state. But the elite want us completely dependent on the state for everything, especially food. They tell us that the production of meat is harmful to the environment and that it uses up land that could be reassigned to agriculture. And yet, the land that cattle graze upon is most often unsuited to agriculture, being relatively unfertile and rocky. Livestock actually is efficient. They graze on grass that humans cannot eat, and they turn it into food for us. They can eat the byproducts of the growth of other crops, such as wheat or oats, that humans cannot also eat, such as oat hulls. And meat is a very nutrient-dense form of food. They want to deny this to us, to get us to eat foods that are naturally revolting to us. They are unconsciously subjecting us to an unconscionable horror. You see, there is a reason why insects are disgusting to us. They want us to eat parasites. They want us to eat creatures that are often the companion to decay and pestilence. All of this is against our natural dignity and also against evolutionary tendencies that have developed in us a revulsion to all things associated with disease and death. That death is to become our source of sustenance is a profound sign of the times. As things continue to grow cold and dead, as order begins to break down, we will be sustained by absolute detritus and debris, like those sorry Ukrainians during the Holodomor who were forced to eat carcasses to survive. We are being denied the dignity of life and being forced to accept societal rigor mortis. Another virtue of the rural life is silence. Silence is golden. Arthur Schopenhauer lamented the endless noise around him that people are so fond of. It interrupts the intellectual task and bothers concentration. He was right to do so. When people reach near the end of their lives, they desire serenity and the natural beauty of the countryside. After a life full of noise and movement, everyone wishes for stillness and silence, but this last wish the elite will deny to everyone. In cities, it is impossible to find the silence necessary to form coherent thoughts. It is the regime of action for action's sake, which is of the most dangerous kind. Action is nothing without considering what it is for, what it advances. The action that the elite wishes for is only labor, and labor for the sake of economic efficiency rather than for love. Their agenda, to break down love and to bring in an age of inhuman impersonality, is only possible when silence and quiet contemplation have gone down the toilet. Christian monks lived in seclusion. Silence and love are companions to one another. The environment of the monastery and its self-sufficiency Its regime, which is labor of love rather than love for labor, allowed the explosion of European thought to be effected without interruption. It's well known that intellectuals join the clergy, no matter their dedication to their religion per se. But noise, expansion, dependency, and cold action oppose all of this. The elite want to destroy all peace and distill everything down to economic power, and power without love is a purblind Promethean endeavor that leads us collectively down into hell. Those who can endure this regime without giving in are fortunate. The city is a place of sprawl and expansion, while the countryside is one of smallness and contraction. On the farm, one's needs are met and nothing more. People are content to be happy. In the city, though, we encounter the opposite attitude. Advertisements plastered on every barrel wall and window pane induce us to the generation of endless appetites for thrills and pleasures. It's telling that when leftists look at the paintings of, for example, Norman Rockwell or other similar depictions of an idyllic rural life, they scoff and claim that nothing like that has ever existed. Living in an urban hellscape has atrophied their humanity, causing them to believe that no one has ever lived in rural conditions, ever had a family, nor is ever content with simplicity. This was very real, even in the 1950s, but the urbanite factory brain cannot even conceive of it. This is why the agrarian question is, in part, a great litmus test. If you're able to look upon the simple life with compassion, if you're able to appreciate its intuitive and natural grandeur, then you're far closer to the right than to the left. The country is a profoundly right-wing place, and this has been a vexation for the left for a long time. It was during the American Civil War that this divide was most evident. The North, urbanized and industrialized and more socially forward, looked down upon the agrarian and backward South, which held on to conservative customs such as honor and shaming, a formal code of social conduct, and, to some extent, even caste, which fits into the aforementioned. The agrarian economics of the South were what allowed this to exist in the first place. People were not mulched up into class workers, but rather there was a small echo in the tea and bourbon-sipping plantation owner of that ancient class of patrician freedmen who, freed from work, had enough time for sociality and citizenship. Beauty and simplicity reigned there, and people did not forget God. The urbanite and the carpetbagger, though, could not but look upon this with disgust. They wanted all to be emancipated just so they can become slaves again, slaves to class, slaves to wealth, slaves to labor, and slaves to efficiency. As Carlyle said in his famous defense of slavery, some, if freed, would only become slaves to nature. To his words, we might append slaves to propaganda, slaves to capital, and slaves to the political machine. Even today, it's true that the country is a conservative place. Communists saw that the rural working class, being content with their small holdings and their simple lives, did not spontaneously revolt. They did not feel oppressed. So the Leninists had to lay upon them the burden that not even capitalism could. The Marxists accuse them of false consciousness, as if they are better at psychoanalyzing the peasantry than the peasants themselves, who Marxists never grant any agency. Human agency, to the Marxist, is only the accessory to historicism. In Ukraine, worse, the Ruralites were class enemies. Anyone who wasn't a proletarian serf, anyone who owned land in the countryside was a kulak, denounced as a traitor and a rebel, and then executed or forcibly expropriated. The rural population, holding its folkways and non-class-based identities close, are always a bulwark to the revolution. Those who wish them to be removed are only unconsciously agreeing with this sentiment that conservative ideals have to be trashed to make way for Kalergi's new urbanite man who has no kinship, no bonds, and no agency, only economy.